ఆవకాయ పికిల్ కాదు, ఆరోగ్యపు పికిల్. పూర్తి వివరాలకు చదవండి రేపటి సాక్షి దినపత్రిక.
Namaste. Welcome to Sakshi TV special immigration talk show. And today we have a special guest, an international lawyer, Dr. Srinivas Kaveti garu with us. And today's topic, we're going to discuss about R1 visas, details, and also the frauds happening in the R1 visas and the precautionary measures, everything. And without further delay, let's welcome Dr. Srinivas Kaveti garu onto the studio. And welcome, sir. Namaste.
Namaste, Andy.
And
Nice.
It's my pleasure being hosting this show and knowing more details about this R1 visas and stuff with your experience and knowledge, and sharing your the precautionary things with us that helpful for us. And so before going deep into the details, I would like to know what exactly is this R1 visas and who are eligible for this R1 visas and stuff, with a brief introduction for us, please.
Nice to choose this topic on the R1 visa. R1 is actually a religious visa. It is applied by the religious organizations. It can be by temples, it can be by churches, it can be by synagogues, and even other religious denominations. And it could be even from Sikh temples, anything with a religious background. Those who practice any religion, they can sponsor people for religious worker. I mean, what is the definition of religious worker? And we all know that maybe a priest or a pastor or a maulviya, or even priest in a synagogue, Vilanta. So, I mean, there are other workers are also there in R1 visa. There are definition says anybody who's professing religion, teaching, let's say somebody teaching theology, in biblical setting in a church. It could be a Catholic church, it could be a Protestant church. There are hundreds of denominations, and there are many religions in the world. People, practice different religions. So if you see Hinduism, we also have Hindu temples, Hindu priests, and if you see Buddhism came from Hinduism, and there are some Jain temples also, and people who are, Jain priests, and they also, Sikhism also came from Hinduism. So anybody who's having a Gurudwara, and they have their own priests, so they can be sponsored. And sometimes even special cooks. For example, if you see Hare Krishna movement, they have their own priest and somebody who specialized in cooking meals for the deities and prasadams. So they also fall under the religious workers category, a very broad category. So most of the times when this religious congregations or organizations, they sponsor religious workers, they sponsor from 1 year to 3 years. It can be for 6 years. So those are called R1 visas. They will, the temples or churches, they will have to file an application with the USCIS, and USCIS will do a site inspection. That means the immigration officer will come to the site. Let's say if there's a temple sponsoring Sai Baba temple or a Krishna temple or any temple, if they're sponsoring some priest from overseas, the USCIS will come and do an inspection. They will see whether you have a 501c, which is a non-profit status. They will see your non-profit organizational documents, how many members you have, how many members of congregation you have, what sort of members they have, are they life members, or they're yearly members, how many people are visiting the temple, do they have a location, can this organization can sponsor, pay them prevailing wage salary. So let's say somebody is brought to New Jersey by a temple. The prevailing wage in New Jersey for a priest, if a New Jersey temple is hiring local person. There are a lot of Hindus in America. Those are all Brahmins, Pandits. And if somebody has to give him a job, or not a job, him a job, it's $47,000 to $60,000. But what is happening? All these religious organizations are giving 10,000, 15,000 salary. That's where the problem is now. So they have to be paid prevailing wage. They have to have an employment contract. And if they are coming, they should be provided some accommodation or a food or airport pickup, even some medical benefits. And there are some prevailing things pertinent to the every state. Every state has its own requirement. So the employer is supposed to offer them. And those are the requirements and for filing an R1. Well, what is the eligibility? The eligibility for the workers, let's say if there's a church, they want to sponsor. So it has to be he has to be the member of the church congregation for 1 or 2 years, should have a study or education in theology. You shall be a baptized man practicing that religion. He should be able to profess that, if you want to be a pastor. But there again, as I said, there are different people can be sponsored, but they have to have that skill, education, and qualification and work experience in that area. And they should be member of that denomination. I give you an example. If any Hindu temple wants to sponsor a priest, he cannot be a Sardaji, or it cannot be a Buddhist monk or a Jain monk. So there has to be somebody from Hinduism with some Vedic education, and he has been practicing that. So they'll be sponsored. So things like that. So there's an eligibility requirements. There are requirements for the organization also. Both have to be satisfied.
That's a very beautiful information and detailed information you gave, because a lot of people don't know what exactly is this R1 visas and everything. So it's like talking to you is like getting a lot of information and is knowing okay, this is the R1 visa. So there are a lot of detail you explained us. Thank you so much, sir. And so I would like to ask few questions on behalf of the audience as well, so that we can get more details about that. So basically frauds are happening a lot in all kind of visas. So if we know about the information how we can rectify the frauds and stuff, that would be helpful for us. So I would like to ask a few questions on that.
Sure. I mean, as we are seeing a lot of labor trafficking in America with these
Right.
IT consulting firms, and a lot of human trafficking, a lot of employers are not paying the wages, and they're not giving the when people are working, there are certain things one has to follow in terms of for the women, in terms for the men. But unfortunately, when you see in the world, even in Christianity also, and Hinduism and many religions, they don't allow women to be a priest. I mean, some dogmas, but a lot of times some religions, yes, they do have women priests too, but most of the religions, they say women cannot be on the priest on the stage. I mean, I would say it's a discrimination, but definitely when the men they're coming, they would like to come with their family or they come by themselves. The question is again, what is the first question for everybody, whoever is watching your audience? What is the prevailing wage? I mean, for an IT programmer, if somebody is coming, there are wage levels: level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. I mean, is there anything like that for priests? I mean, unfortunately, Department of Labor doesn't regulate priests. So there are no wage levels, but there is a prevailing wage. So the Department of State Labor comes because there are two types of labors in America. One is a federal labor, which governs the foreign workers, and the second is called state labor. In this case, let's say if somebody is getting sponsored in an H1, comes to America, so there is a federal labor which governs, saying that, okay, if you're bringing a foreign worker, please pay this much of salary. If you're hiring a local person, if you're hiring on a level 1 or a level 2 or a level 3, the Department of Labor has prescribed certain salary levels, which is called prevailing wage. In our India, it's called Minimum Wage Act. You have to have a minimum salary you have to pay.
Yeah.
So similarly, the federal government doesn't designate, but the state government will say, hey, somebody who has to survive in New York or New Jersey or even California or Texas, you require a certain amount of money, right? You have to pay the bills for the apartment, food, transportation, insurance. If you're bringing your wife and children, there are certain prevailing wages. So the state governs and says, yes, in terms of New Jersey, let's say $46,000 to $47,000. If you're hiring a priest, if you're hiring a priest in a temple, or if you're hiring a pastor in a church, or if you're hiring a Maulvi in a mosque, or if you're bringing some, priest in Sikh temple or in a Buddhist monk setting. So things like that. So that is the first thing one has to understand. The second thing is, what are the terms and conditions? What is an employment agreement? Is there any agreement? What are the terms and conditions? What benefits you're giving me? Are you just going to do an R1? Are you going to give me a job for 2 years or 3 years? Can I get another job? If I get a better salary, can I go? If I go, is there any problem? Do I have to pay you any compensation? Can I bring my wife and children? Are you going to support me to bring my wife and children? Are you going to do a green card if I serve you or I work for you for a few years? All these things have to be in employment agreement. But unfortunately, what I've been coming across in my firm, we have some temples and churches and some religious priests we get across. They're coming and showing us things that these employers are exploiting. The temples are exploiting, churches are exploiting, the religious organizations are exploiting the religious workers, which is unlawful as per the state law, as per the federal law, as per the human rights law, as per the international law as well. So it's very sad. We expect that these religious organizations are exploiting the religious workers and they're violating the law, and which is very sad. I mean, if you ask me specific questions, I'll be able to give specific answers if that happens to any employee religious worker, where they can go.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, you can, see, our firm has been getting, I've got some clients coming up. They're saying that the employers are asking money for filing an R1, which is unlawful. Employer is required to pay the R1 visa fees and pay the insurance. And if you're giving a salary, it can cover your food and accommodation and travel. That can be, that can be calculated, computed as per the wages, prevailing wages in particular state. So I guess the religious workers who are accepting jobs, they must contact some qualified immigration attorneys in the country, get some legal advice, know their legal rights. And I also, this is my opinion, that even the religious organizations which are sponsoring not to break the law, they should have some competent immigration attorneys advising them. And two, because they are under the non-profit law, they should also take advices from the non-profit lawyers, and they should also take advice from CPAs, certified public accountants, who specialize in non-profit law. Because CPAs are also, there are CPAs, certified public accountants. This is like something like a chartered accountants, those who specialize in profit-making tax returns and non-profit making tax returns. So in America, it's everything is specialty in it. So one has to go through that. It's a specialized knowledge so that your rights and obligations are protected. Not just anybody. If you see, especially in New York, there are hundreds of Hindu temples. I mean, anybody, 4 people, you can form a temple. You can have a temple at home, worship. I mean, if you see in Queens, there are many Guyanese, Trinidadians, they have temples in their own house. I mean, there are city laws. You can't have a temple in your house because there are some rules and regulations, because in a weekend you're having a congregation. There's so many cars on the street, and there is a problem of fire because you lit candles and you lit diya in the temples or in churches, and you do a puja or even do some shlokas, or you do playing some music. It's going to be sound pollution, and if more people are there, you have to take the permission of the city. So there are so many rules and regulations which govern religious congregations, and city has certain limits. So they have to take advice from different professionals to run everything lawfully.
So, what protections are available for Hindu priests who are victims of human trafficking or labor exploitation under the R1 visas?
The first question is, these Hindu priests, it's unfortunate because they don't understand English. Where most of them, they are educated in Sanskrit, they go to Veda Pathashalas. When they come to America, they don't speak Hindi, they don't speak English. Language is a barrier. So they don't understand. So first thing is, they need to be given some interpreters and they need to be given some information. The first thing is, what is the prevailing wage? They have to be paid. Number one. Number two, payroll has to be done. They have to be provided payroll, paychecks. There is social security contributions. There are unemployment insurance. There are workers' compensation. There are a whole 9 years every state has, and they have to comply the laws. Number one. Number two, they have to be given certain conditions of employment. See, if you see when we are working in certain places in America, let's say there are some women workers or there's some workers with children, and then some workers, men and women, they should have a minimum toilet, right? It's a bathroom, for the men's bathroom or female bathroom. I mean, for example, if there are some employment places within the factories or some places where they're working, if they're having children, they should have creches or something like that. So every employment setting has certain conditions. And so same for the priests. Most of the times we hear that the employment is given in the temple and they're asked them to sleep in the temple itself. They don't have a bed, they don't have a bathroom, they don't have a toilet, they don't have a kitchen, and they're saying, oh, you get food. Because every temple they give prasadam. So they're saying, okay, you just eat prasadam. I mean, that's unlawful. And you don't have minimum heating facility, you don't have minimum air conditioned facility. Minimum, you don't, let's say if your priest is bringing their wife and children, where they're going to sleep, if the children are there. See, these are minimum requirements has to be provided by these religious organizations when they're bringing the priests, and they have to be given, some transportation or even medical insurance. And they're saying, oh, we won't provide you medical insurance. If these guys become sick, what's happening? They're going to go to the city hospitals and they become a public charge. They're depending on the city hospitals. Who is paying the money to run the city hospitals? People like you and me, or citizens and green card holders. We are paying taxes. That taxes are being used to run the hospitals. And these people who are coming, they're going to the hospitals to take treatment. So it's causing a burden on the society. That means you're becoming a public charge. So you cannot be a public charge as an immigrant when you come, because you're coming and the organizations are saying that we are paying a salary and we'll take care of them. When they come here, they're not given any treatment, medical treatment. And if the wife and children are coming, where they have to go and stay, apartments. If they're giving an apartment, they're saying, okay, we're paying you $1,500 or $2,000. They're deducting $1,500 in rent of an apartment. So what do they have? They have only $400-500. Can they support for food and transportation and even insurance? The answer is no. So what they have to do, they have to go and look for another job outside. Or people ask my firm, I said, can I work outside? Can I work in a gas station? Because the salary which the religious organization is giving is not enough. They cannot pay their children fees. So they're saying, well, can I get a job outside? Can I do puja outside? Can I pick up some work outside? So this is outside the employment terms and conditions. So they're breaching the law. Employees are breaching the law. Employer is making them to breach the law. So these things, and these are all protections one has to give. So that means the employees have to find the credibility of the employer, and they see, since how long they're in the business. They have to see how many employees they brought in the past. And some people, I just got one client who came from when pastor came and asked us. He was in New York, one of the temples, for 9 years, and they promised him to get him a green card. At the time of filing and at the time of responding to the request for further evidence, they failed to give him a response to the USCIS, and his entire family's R1 got denied, and his green card got denied. And after 9 to 10 years, he's leaving back to India. And his son has gone back. His daughter is saying, I cannot go because she's in the middle of college. This man, after investing 10 years, himself and his wife, is going back to India. I mean, what good is that? You make everything, disclose everything and bring the religious workers. Otherwise, his daughter's life is at stake now. She has become illegal. What is he going to do? There's a financial injury. there's an immigration injury. She cannot stay back. She has to go out of the country, and she can never come back and work. She was educated here for 9 years. Her high school and 11th and 12th and college is here. So 10 years she has been in the country. So there's a hardship for the children as well. So there, it's not just looking at one priest, religious worker. It is impacting the entire family, psychologically, financially, and morally, and health-wise. So many things, emotionally. One has to look into all of this. So
True.
it has got a serious repercussion. So they have to look at all those factors.
Yeah, that's true. Because, on daily basis, we see the priests coming to our house doing puja, or, when we go to the temples, we see. But the back end, what they are suffering or what they are going through is like, when we know them, then it's really how they are suffering a lot coming here, and not having enough money for that. So I agree with you, sir. And I have another question. Like, these people came on R1 visas. Is there a way they can apply for the green cards and stuff by their own, or is through their they have to go through the person or organization who got them here? Is that the way they generally do GCs, or how does it work?
No, they cannot file green cards by themselves, and they have to go through their employer. The employer has to file a I-140 petition, immigrant petition. They can only go through their employer. They cannot do on their own. Unless and
Also,
until some priests or some pastors, they've done PhDs, postdoctorates, and they're extraordinary, they're doing something great to this country, then they can apply under the extraordinary ability under the national interest waiver. Other than that, no, that everybody has to go through this employer sponsoring. But the beauty is, it's not like IT programmers. They don't have too much of waiting period. They only have 2-3 years of waiting period.
right.
So that's
That's
the
true.
best part.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, what red flags do immigration authorities typically look for when accessing R1 visa applications for Hindu priests? Because when we are applying for the R1 visas, we need to consider some red flags, right? So before going everything the process. So yeah, can you explain on that?
Yeah, it is not only just for a Hindu priests or pastors or Muslim maulias or other people, synagogue, priest. What they see is that they see whether this organization is a non-profit. The immigration will look whether there's enough money in their bank accounts. Do they have enough members? Do they have a physical location? Is it a bona fide employment? Are they offering prevailing wage? What are the conditions of employment? They look at all these things. When they do a site visit, the immigration and custom enforcement guy, that means he's like a police officer by immigration, they will physically come and interview the employer and the employee, and they will do the research. Then only they will give an R1. And even for green card also, they will come and check it out. They will come and check your records also, and they have to keep it in access. They will speak to the president of the organization. They'll speak to the employee, which is the priest, and then only they will give. If they see anything, let's say if the employer is not paying any prevailing wage, or if they're not, see, for the non-profits, you don't pay tax. That is the beauty of the non-profit law.
Yeah,
But you have to file tax returns. You do have to file tax returns. And once you do all of that, and they will see whether this organization is a lawful assembly or unlawful assembly. There are some organizations in America, if you see Muslim organizations, they're banned. They are declared as a terrorist organization. They will look at all those things before. These are the red flags. If they see something unlawful you're doing, or you're doing, then it's a red flag. Then they will not only, punish them and arrest the employers and employees, but it's going to be a serious repercussions. And next time they can't sponsor, they can't open anything. You're being monitored. So those are the red flags.
So thank you so much, sir. These are like preventive. Definitely, we definitely have to consider all these preventive measures. Yeah. So I have another question. So what role does the cultural understanding play in preventing misunderstanding or fraudulent activities related to R1 visas for Hindu priests?
See, the first thing, as I mentioned to you, the language is a barrier for these Hindu priests who comes from India. They either might speak Hindi, or some people mix Telugu or Tamil, Kannada, and English is not their language, because they're going to a Vedic school or a Sanskrit school. The language and the culture is the biggest barrier. See, the other thing is, we see priests next to God in our country, and even doctors also. See, there's definitely some cultural issues in this. They need to understand. The unfortunate thing is, many priests, I don't know how, because not knowing English, how can they get a driver's license? So they have to be given some minimum knowledge and minimum information. And if they don't know, they have to use their own phones. And these days, they can also use some translation apps. I think they should get the knowledge of law in this country, Department of Labor Regulations and health and other things. The other thing is definitely the employer has to educate the employee, and employer also has to make their own efforts. Talk to CPS. One of the priests came to our office, and I was amazed to see that he worked for 2 3 months, and he was given only W-2 for $700, and he filed his tax return for $700. And next year he worked for 9 months, and he was given only $8,000 of wage. How can, and he sent the same papers to his wife and children to get a visa. And the consulate said that your wife and children will become a public charge. They denied his wife and children visa. And the guy didn't even see his family for 2 years. It's an emotional distress. So why these things are happening? Because not having enough knowledge. Either way, the employer, they don't care, and employees, they don't understand. So how many people will go to a qualified attorney, pay $300-400, or to a CPA and ask some advice? They don't. So I think our firm is giving a lot of advices to priests coming from different backgrounds and churches, pastors, and everything. We do give a lot of free consultations, and we educate them. I mean, if they want us to hire our firm, Ramsey and Associates, they hire us, and we work for them. So these are the things they should keep in mind. Definitely, culture plays a role, but ignorance of law is not an excuse. They need to understand the law, and if they get to know the law, if they enrich themselves, they can have a better life. They can bring their wife and children. They can fight for their rights.
That's true. Yeah. So before stepping, it's good to have a clear knowledge of everything, hear about the laws and stuff, especially for them who is having a language barrier. So yeah, that's true, sir.
Yeah.
And then how prevalent is R1 visa fraud among Hindu priests in the US?
Well, we have not come across many, but our firm is getting some calls. I mean, and most of the time, because the language is a barrier, they don't see any videos or interviews of immigration R1 laws, And prior, I've done some videos on R1 visas, and this is the first time we are doing some, fraudulent activities by the churches, temples, and mosques. In the past, some mosques have done. That's the reason the immigration is auditing many religious organizations, because a lot of Muslim mosques they've taken the money, these Maulvis, and started sponsoring many people. And there was frauds mostly in Islamic areas, but I don't, again, blame only one religion. There are different, even some Jewish people also have been doing in America, and they have been arrested in this country. I guess even some churches. I don't say particularly to Hindus, but any religious organization, if anybody has any problem, I think they should file a complaint with USCIS and Department of Labor, and with the Income Tax IRS Department. And there are so many civil rights agencies, they can go and file complaint. And there's some whistleblower complaints are also there. That means you don't have to give your name. You can just, whistleblower means you have a protection. You don't have to give your name and address or phone number. You can just give a tip to USCIS or any other agencies. They can be investigated. My purpose of doing this interview on religious frauds is not to instigate anybody or misuse this information. They have to get in touch with some qualified lawyers and get some legal advices. And I'm not trying to solicit any business, or I'm not against any religious organizations as well. It's just purely just based on our firm's experience, we're doing it.
Right. So it's like an educational kind of thing for the
Yes.
people. That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Purely
let's say that true. Yeah. So let's say a Hindu priest or let's say a priest or person who came, from with the R1 visa, knowingly or unknowingly entered into a fraud activity. So how do you think he can overcome, or how can he come out of that? Is there any helpful suggestion for him to come out of that, or anything that he can reach to get out of that fraud? Like it's what, let's say he's unknowingly entered. He doesn't know what.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would like to know
Okay.
on
The
that.
law says if you do anything fraudulent activity knowingly, then you're in trouble because you have a mens rea. You know that you have a knowledge, bad ill will mind. But sometimes people also do things happen unknowingly. They have to consult some qualified lawyers in their own area for any defenses. But once you commit an offense, you are liable for punishment. But there is some mitigating factor. This is called mitigation in America. They should get in touch with some qualified immigration lawyers, criminal defense attorneys, discuss in their own areas, in their own states, and get some solutions from the lawyers. They have to discuss in private. Of course, there are some remedies. If there are, these are called mitigating factors. They can cooperate with the government and they can talk to their lawyers, attorneys, those who are specialized, so they can, they have some remedies for them. Yes, but we cannot say anything in public on open television. But they have to get in touch with their lawyers if they have got into this trouble.
Okay. Yeah. So is there anything more that you can share, your real-time scenarios that helps give us more information on this? Like if any point, let's say, I may be missing some points while asking or something, but in your knowledge or in your experiences, anything that raises a concern or anything that we need to consider, is there anything that you can share with us, please?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess you've done a wonderful job. You've covered many of things, and they should get in touch with the local guys if there's any wage claims to the Department of Labor's, and they should get in touch with some lawyers who practice labor law in their particular jurisdictions, get some proper legal advice before they do anything, and not rely on some videos or some television shows or some reading on Google or ChatGPT. They should get in touch with some local guys, those who specialize in that area, so to protect their interests. I think that's all I could say. But I guess you have covered a lot of things in this, in our show, and you've done a wonderful job. And
Thank you so much.
thank you very much for having me, Chaitanya.
Yeah, thank you so
No
much, sir.
problem.
And your information, everything is really helpful for us. And that was like wonderful talking to you and gaining a lot of knowledge on this particular topic, especially. Yeah, so, and thank you so much for being with us.